This brings us to the concept of opportunity cost. Because we have a limited budget, we have to make choices, and in this process we have to decide what we're willing to give up in order to spend more on something else. For instance, do I want to go to the movies, or do I want to spend this money instead on dinner? This is an example of opportunity cost. What am I willing to give up to spend more on something else? First, all value is subjective. Second, the more we consume of something, the less we value it. The second point is known as the Law of Diminishing Returns. The first slice of cake tastes better than the second or the third slice of cake. In fact, most people reach a point where another slice of cake might even make them feel queasy. So when we take all these things together, we shed some light on the core of economics, and that's the notion of marginal analysis. For economists, all choices are made at the margin, and that simply means that individuals make choices based on how much value they get from one additional unit of a given product. For example, if I don't own a car and I decide to buy a Mustang, it will provide tremendous value in transportation. But once I already have a car, the additional value of another car drops dramatically. That money would be better spent on rent or house renovation or a vacation. We don't think about the need to buy a whole new pantry of food or a whole new wardrobe. Instead, we think about the addition that we need to make to the kitchen, such as more eggs or more milk or buy some coffee. In the same way, we think about buying a new jacket or an additional pair of shoes to complement what we already have. Here, we're thinking at the margin, and the value is determined by how much we're willing to pay for an additional unit. This may seem like a simple insight, but the shift towards marginal thinking solved a problem that had been stumping economists for decades. Classical economists were troubled by what they called the paradox of value. Their famous example is the comparison between the price of diamond and the price of water. Diamonds tend to be very expensive, while water is extremely cheap. The puzzle is that most of us can get by without diamond, while none of us can survive without water. So why is it that the price of diamonds are so expensive and water is so cheap? Marginal analysis, which was introduced in the late 1800s, solved that problem. Remember, we're talking about the value of one additional unit. Most of us don't have a stash of diamond, so diminishing returns haven't set in. That means that we're willing to pay a fairly high price for that diamond. On the other hand, water is plentiful. It's all around us. So the amount we're willing to pay for an extra glass of water is fairly low. What we see here is that the total value of diamond is very close to its marginal value. Most of us don't have many diamonds, so we're still willing to pay a fairly high price for an additional diamond. With water, the total value is different from the marginal value. So while water is critical to our survival, once we have what we need, the value of a little bit more goes down dramatically. Nonetheless, let's remember that all value is subjective. So there are cases where the next glass of water is highly valued. A man stranded in a hot desert for 2 days is very likely willing to pay an infinite amount of money for a glass of water, because in that case, water is just like a diamond.